Okay, so raise your hand if you enjoy listening to music. Okay, that's pretty much just about everybody. Now, how many of you have heard that song before? Okay, that makes me pretty happy. So did you know that songs have a lot in common with poetry? Some say they are a different version of poetry. They both tell a story, they express feelings and emotions, and many use different symbols of metaphor and similes to increase the imagery felt by the audience. So in your small groups for a few minutes, I'd like you to discuss why you like or dislike poetry and give a few reasons. So just for a few minutes, if you could discuss. Okay, if you can sum it up in the next 30 seconds or so. All right, class, if we can have your attention back up here. I would like one student from each group to give me one sentence about a reason somebody, or maybe the majority of your group, likes or dislikes poetry. So we'll start on this table over here.
Michael doesn't like poetry because if it doesn't rhyme, it doesn't sound good.
Oh, okay.
We like poetry when we're able to find our own interpretation of it.
Good. Back table. Okay, very good. And this table.
We don't like poetry because of big words and too many metaphors and symbols, but we do like it when, we do like it when the author can read it to us and we get their full emotion.
Good. And the next table.
I really like poetry because it can be about anything and be constructed in any way that the author feels it's like.
Very good. Table.
Yeah, then it could be personal or
Mm-hmm. And the final table.
having with artists, we're used to visually representing our emotions, but this is another way to express them through written word.
Exactly, very good. So I did notice from a few of you, and just listening as you were discussing in your small groups, that a big reason many people don't like poetry is that it's difficult to understand. So today we're going to learn a reading strategy to help you comprehend poetry, and you can use this reading strategy with any other forms of writing. So it's called the double entry diary. So I did hand out a form that's front and back. You don't really need to worry about this side at all, But the side that just has double entry diary, if you could turn to that side. So the way this works is the first step is you can either fold it in half along the hot dog style or just draw a line all the way down the middle. So if you can do that real quick. And I don't know how to get this thing to work. Does anybody know? It's on. This is on. Okay, are we ready? So what you're going to do is on the top left, you're going to write passages. I'll write that on the board in case you need help with spelling. 7th graders. And then on the top right, you're going to write thoughts. All right. So now there's a second stack of papers, if you haven't already passed them out, if you could pass them out among your groups, of a poem called The Chimney Sweeper. When my mother died, I was very young, written by William Blake. Does everybody have a copy of that? Okay. So I'm going to model my reading and my use of the double entry diary by reading the poem out loud, if you could follow along. When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. There's little Tom Dacker, who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved. So I said, hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight, that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. Then naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm, so if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. So I'm now going to model, just with the first stanza, which is the first chunk, how the double entry diary works. So the first step is you're going to pick a passage that you enjoy or dislike or connect to or have a question about, maybe a question about the vocab. So what I'm going to put is that my mother died when I was very young. So that is the passage, and if you're using a longer text, you'd also want to put the page number. But since this is all in one page, we don't. And then I'm going to put my thought that I had about the passage. So I'm going to say, well, my mother died, I was very young, so I was a child when my mother died. And then you can continue. If you have lots of questions, feel free to write as many as you want. If I only have one more, my next question could be, well, what does it mean by my father sold me? New pen. So I'll just write down any questions I have or connections I've made. Perhaps if your mother passed away when she was very young, you could put that you connected with the narrator because of that, or you didn't connect with them because of that. So I'd now like you to work alone for the next few minutes, or you can also converse with your group members and try and do the next stanza, finish the first stanza and go on to the next while using this double entry diary strategy, and I'll walk around and answer any questions if you have them. And go.
for behaving. Did you? Okay.
You can write that down. Why did the author choose to use the word white? Turn it off. Sorry. Feel free to converse if you guys have questions.
Sorry, teacher.
Keep going. Good job. Okay, if we can come back to large group now. Does anybody want to volunteer a thought or a connection or a question they had about the poem? Angela?
I just wanted to comment on the passage that was talking about how the childhood after he died, he would have God as his father, and how even though the morning was cold, his thoughts were still warm. And I just thought that that was kind of very indicative of how children think and how when they're young they have such this positive outlook on the world, and they see less about like the bad things that are going on and try to focus on the positive. And I think that's something really beautiful about children.
Very good. I definitely agree with that. Does anybody else have any other connections? Hannah?
This is just a comment about using the person versus the word and segmentation. You know, a lot of times the stylistic choice, the time period, like it's something characteristic of English or this is
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know the answer.